Hey, Steelers Nation, it's Joe Rocky with the Pittsburgh Syndicate, getting ready for the first preseason game tomorrow night. And in this episode, I'm going to break down kind of what I think is important for us to look for, what I'm going to be looking forward to for in tomorrow night's game down in Tampa, and really what I think that the Steelers overall are going to do in a very broad sense. So I think that it's important to keep in mind that obviously the first preseason game, it is in part a two-part process. Part one, survive, no major injury. Part two, be competitive, see how we are camp wise compared to another team out there. So when we see this, it becomes then a battle of two conflicting issues with any preseason game with the Steelers. On the one hand, to show how strong we are against relative to other camps, physicality is going to be a must. It's a must for a Tomlin team. But to keep the players protected, we're not going to be seeing the stars a lot. I think that's natural to expect. But where I particularly want to see the showing of this is how well is the offensive line doing, particularly the rebuilt side. This is going to be the first real test that we'll be able to see with Broderick Jones on tape. And the reason for that is putting him in isolated one-on-one situations where he's at camp isn't exactly the best way to identify it. You need to do it against actual competition because we know TJ and Highsmith have the potential of being the highest sacking duel in the NFL. And to think a rookie is going to step up and stop that is not realistic. But seeing what we do against Tampa Bay, granted, one of the weakest rosters in the NFL, but seeing how well Broderick does is very important. Seeing how well Moore does also is important. Where they're lining up relative to with the ones or with the twos, I find less consequential with this game. I think it's very likely that Broderick will line up with the twos and play a lot of snaps. I also think it's very likely that we see the same from Nick Herbig, just for the pass rushing element, because you're going to want to keep those two studs off the field, give Herbig a lot of snaps and see how he does. And with that being said, I expect him to dominate second team competition. And I think that if we're looking back at this game after the fact, that Herbig, the fourth round draft pick edge rusher, has a very good chance of what the Steelers will call the game MVP. And I think that that's something that we want to look forward immensely. Obviously, we want to see if the depth chart between Austin and Olszewski at punt returner will come to pass. The majority of Tomlin's tenure, the preseason games are the biggest indicator of what are we going to get for the actual roster. Obviously, they practice it in camp every day, but what the actual results are on the field. And essentially, I think as long as Austin doesn't fumble, it should be his job regardless. And I think that there's a very good chance that that's how things come to pass. With the turbulence of chaos that happened earlier in the week with Porter losing those two one-on-one battles, I'm anxious to see how he looks against game competition. As I said in that video, I fully expect those reps to not really translate at all into real football for a lot of reasons. First, the drill was engineered to be in the offense. Second, Tomlin put him against the type of receiver that we know he's not going to be good against from a body type position. That being said, it's what opposing teams are going to try to get against Porter until they learn the guy's a ball hawk. And do I think he's going to snag one during the preseason? Probably. But I think it's going to happen. It's more likely to happen in the second matchup, just for the simple fact that most teams run the ball historically much more in the first preseason game than the second. Although, with that being said, Baker Mayfield only needs one chance, and he said that he will be starting that game. So I'm interested to see how the defensive depth works, particularly with Benton and Leal on the inside of D tackle, because we're going to get tested with running the ball. Will those two be able to hold up in run defense? And I really believe that's a giant indicator of how this defensive rotation is going to be swept up. Because if they show, Leal and Benton, that is, that they can stop the run and be reliable all 3 plays, first, second, and third down, then I believe that the percentage of snaps played will drastically skyrocket. And it's not going to be a situation where they're a distant 2B to get onto the field. I think that the best way the Steelers can address this is similar to the way that they treat TJ Watt. TJ Watt comes out on the beginning of a drive, goes absolutely lightning, and if we let up 2 first downs, TJ tends to go off the field until the other team is in the red zone. And then TJ comes back and goes crazy. And if we can show that Leal and Benton are viable replacements for that middle of the field portion with Cam, I believe that the defense is going to be that much better. Because Cam Hayward had an amazing pass rush and defense last year in terms of pressuring the quarterback, especially early in drives when he was fresh. And if we're able to extend that period of time, all the better. Not to mention the less likely that after a team gets the first or second first down on us, that they're just guaranteed to get into the red zone, as was pretty much the case in years past. So I think that Leal and Benton need to be the 2 defensive people we focus upon the most. Trent Norwood got a lot of play earlier in camp when KZ and Minka both were out. It'll be interesting to see what he does there. I do expect Trubisky to throw an interception because he's been throwing a ton of interceptions this offseason. And I have been secretly, if not openly, saying I believe that Rudolph is poised to take that backup quarterback position. And I'm very interested to see how both of their ball placements work. And I already know that we're going to be getting the Mason is playing against the 3s. You can't judge it. That's not true. You can judge ball placement. Now, granted, if he has 0 pressure on him and Trubisky is constantly under pressure, that's not exactly apples to apples. But assuming the pressure rates are similar, you can tell ball placement is what it is. And where will the backup quarterback position stoke out? And think about the amazingness of this thought process that I've just gone through personally. This time last year, I was upset that we drafted Kenny because I thought that Trubisky was going to be the end-all solution. And now I think he's going to be the 3rd-string quarterback basically a year later. It's just an amazing, amazing overhaul of how that process went. So I'm very excited for this first preseason game, with the game being on at 7 o'clock when we normally release our videos. Obviously, I will not be releasing a video during the game. I think that's not smart. So you guys will be hearing from me after the game. As soon as the NFL breaks out their footage and I can start giving actual game footage, that will be the basis of the upcoming videos following the Tampa game. I look forward to being with you guys throughout this entire season, Steelers Nation. It's going to be awesome. And here we go, Steelers. Here we go.